Hey everybody. Okay, so I tried to start this about a minute ago and my whole camera thing fell on the floor. So I was actually really glad that the video hadn't started when I turned it on because everything went falling to the floor. But I seem to have gotten that sorted out. So welcome everyone. Sunday night Biblio talk. My second one going solo by myself. Hopefully Hannah will be able to join us again next month. She just had a real busy month. And I was happy to do this on my own and see how it goes. And I think the first one went pretty well. So hopefully the second one goes well. The first time I talked about a book list I put out at the beginning of the month, which was all nonfiction about women that was written by women. I was super excited about that book list. And this time I'm talking about a book list I just put out on Friday, which I'm equally excited about. This one is for Juneteenth. As you all know, tomorrow is Juneteenth, which is Freedom Day. And I put together a book list, like just 8 books. Honestly, they weren't in any particular order. There were just a couple different categories of like kind of what you're looking for. And you can see little synopsi, is that a word? Synopsises? Not sure. Of each of those books if you go to www.thebookwar.com and look at the book list, and each of the books has a little synopsis next to it that I wrote. I've read all these books. They're all amazing and absolutely worth picking up and reading today, tomorrow for Juneteenth, anytime during the year. They're all fantastic books. So I'm just going to go through the book list in no particular order, honestly, and I'm just going to tell you a little bit about each of the books and why I think they're a great one to pick up for Juneteenth or really anytime. So the first one, I feel like we have to start with On Juneteenth, is the name of this book. It's by Annette Gordon-Reed, and she is a winner of a Pulitzer Prize. She's an amazing author, native Texan, and it's a short little guy. I have it on my Kindle, and I read it first time, I think, last year. And I'm like, you know what? This is like a yearly book. Like, this is one of those ones that you can like pick up every like Juneteenth around, mid-June and just read it in a couple days and just like remember like why this holiday is important to our national history. So I highly recommend picking up On Juneteenth by Annette Gordon-Reed. She's from Texas. She's a brilliant writer. And she just elaborates and story tells on why Juneteenth is important, why it was important to her growing up, celebrating it, and why it's an important commemoration, this Freedom Day, for all Americans. And why it's a really important part of American history. So I highly recommend picking that one up. It's really short. It won't take you long to read. And it's absolutely 100% worthwhile, for sure. So if my Kindle will go back to my homepage here, sometimes it's a little slow. I think I just have a lot of stuff on this Kindle now. And I think maybe that's why it's really a bit of a drag. Sometimes it just takes it a while to... But the next one I want to show you is also on my Kindle. So I'm just waiting for it to pop up here, if I can get it to open to the title page. So here it is. Okay. Many of you will probably have heard this one. If you haven't read it, it's absolutely worth picking up. How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi. This came out a few years ago. I read it pretty quickly after it came out. And I have to say, it really changed my framework, right, about how we think about racism in this country and how we think about not being racist in this country, and the systems in place that sustain the racism, and the racist policies that are in place that are continuing to be perpetuated by our racist ideas and our way of thinking. And the thing that Ibram X. Kendi does in this book that I really appreciate is he doesn't just call everybody out and say like fix your stuff, right? Like get it fixed. He gives real life situations, his own life of people that he's known, where we have these ideas that are racist and sometimes we don't even know it, right? Like we're not even cognizant of it, but that doesn't make it not racist, right? And tools that he gives us some tools to be able to figure that out for ourselves and in others, and then, work towards anti-racism, right? I think this book, maybe more than any of the others, changed how I thought about racism in this country, and helped me to reframe, even for myself, what it means to live in an anti-racist way. And Ibram Kendi makes a really good point, and he says that I've heard many interviews with him, and he reiterates this a lot. Is like we all have some racist tendency and some racist bias, right? None of us are perfect, right? Anti-racist, right? But we can make conscientious decisions that are anti-racist. And that's what we need to continue to strive for. So his book is great, How to Be an Anti-Racist. If you haven't read it, and you haven't read On Juneteenth, both of those books, neither one is super long. On Juneteenth is a little bit shorter, but How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi is really phenomenal, and it really can change how you think about racism in America, and can give you some really good tools, I think, to figure your own anti-racist life out, or at least strive for a more anti-racist life. So that's those two. This one is You Are Your Best Thing. Okay, and this is, the subtitle is Vulnerability, Shame, Resilience, and the Black Experience, and this is an anthology. So this is a book of sort of short essays, short stories, edited by Tarana Burke and Brené Brown. And this book, I use this in my class when I teach. I actually use, so you can see I got all these little little flags here on the on this one. These are amazing. And some of them are like surprising at how much they touch you know, whether you're a person who is experiencing the Black experience in America because you are Black, African American, and or a brown person too, you know, but even as a white person from the Midwest, these touched me, you know, touched on things and vulnerabilities that I experience as well, right? But then also on things that I don't experience, right? So it helped me to understand the vulnerability that other people experience in America that I don't experience. So this is amazing. This one, of all of these, I would say for me, this is the most sort of emotionally provocative of all the books on this particular recommendation list. So I would just say, going into this one, know that that's what you're getting into, but it is absolutely worthwhile. Absolutely worthwhile. My sister read it. We read it for my book club, and I use it in my class, and everybody finds something in here that is profound for them, you know, for whatever reason, right? We all have different reasons. We all enter into these stories in our own places, and so they touch us differently. But You Are Your Best Thing is absolutely worth picking up. I mean, you can read it in tidbits because it's little sort of short essay stories. So you can just read sort of one at a time, process it, come back to it. So that's a good one for that. So this one, I feel like this should probably just be like this should be like required reading for high schoolers. This one here, Barracoon, the story of the last black cargo, by the iconic Zora Neale Hurston, who wrote, of course, Their Eyes Are Watching God. Zora Neale Hurston is obviously, I mean, I probably don't need to say to book people, but an amazing author, amazing writer. This is an ethnography. She talked to this man who, you know, is labeled as sort of the last black cargo, the last living person who'd been enslaved. It was early, it might have been like 1920s, I wonder if it says here. Yeah, 1927, to Plateau, Alabama, to interview, and he was 86 at the time. I'm reading this off the back because I couldn't remember off the top of my head. Cujo Lewis. And that's what this is. This is the ethnography of him, and it's brilliant. And I honestly think it probably should be just required reading for high school students. So this one is absolutely worth picking up if you like kind of a history, but more of like a kind of like ethnography sort of interview kind of thing, rather than like, you know, sort of like a big like history book, right? But Zora Neale Hurston, anything that's written by her, also feel free to pick that up because you're going to love it and it'll be amazing. And it'll be perfect for Juneteenth. Okay. This is a different one. My sister will laugh. Hannah, of course, will get a kick out of this. This is literally the only poetry book I have. We read this, Amanda Gorman's poems, Call Us What We Carry. We read this for book club earlier in the year. Maybe it was either it was like January, February, maybe. We read this for book club, and it's all poems. It's Amanda Gorman. She's brilliant. She has a couple other books out now. This one, I think, resonated with our book club in a way that maybe other poetry books might not, because she has a lot of poems in here about living through the COVID-19, sort of the quarantine, the illness, just the change in the world. Right. So she talks a lot about that. She talks a lot about the Black experience in America, both past and present, in poetry form. She does a really brilliant job with some historical documents, some journals, some letters written by, there's one in here, the letters, I may not get it exactly right, but I believe it was written by a Black officer in World War II. I'm pretty sure. He was based, I think, in... I want to say France, but I'm not 100% sure if that's right. So anyway, she does some really brilliant things in here. If you like poetry, or like for me, I don't really like care for poetry like in and of itself. But this was, I felt like a good way for me to engage in poetry, even though it's not my thing, right? So it was good for that, I feel like. So Amanda Gorman, Call Us What We Carry, is a really excellent poetry book, standalone, for anybody who's into poetry, but also I think it's a good sort of introduction for people who aren't used to reading poetry. She does a really great job, and she's a brilliant poet, for sure. Okay, the last three that I'm going to talk about are big ones. These are tomes, and they are all absolutely worth picking up, for sure. The first one, which I think I've actually talked about on a Biblio Talk before because I read this spring, is called The Warmth of Other Suns, The Epic Story of America's Great Migration, and it's written by Isabel Wilkerson. She also wrote Cast, which I just finished, and it is also phenomenal. These are, but like this is what I'm talking about. This is a tome, right? This is a big one. But it's amazing. It's just phenomenal. She interviews and tells the story of three different individuals and their families as they migrated from the South to the North at different time periods during the 20th century. So one was earlier, I think, I may not get the dates exactly right, but one migrated earlier, like in the 1920s, and then one kind of migrated, I feel like maybe after World War II. So late 40s, early 50s. And then I think maybe the last one was like late 50s or the 60s. So anyway, she interviews these people. She follows their lives. She tells their stories of what it was like, moving, changing location, changing expectations for Black people migrating from the South to the North throughout the 20th century. And it's just a phenomenal book. It is a bit of a tome. Let me see how many pages it is. It's, I won't count the, there's the epilogue. Okay. So epilogue, 538 pages, not counting the indexes and so on and so forth. So that one is great. She also wrote Cast, which is also phenomenal and absolutely worth picking up, and reading. Okay, so next Juneteenth, this is also a history. This one you may have heard of, Stamped from the Beginning, The Definitive History of Racist Ideas in America by Ibram X. Kendi. I read this pretty quickly after it came out, and I have to say, in my description on our blog at thebookwar.com, I say, like, this is literally the best subtitle for any book I've ever seen, is The Definitive History of Racist Ideas in America. That's just exactly what this book does. It traces, it puts these racist ideas into context. It gives us the context of like where this came from, why it came into being, why it's perpetuated, all of those sort of things, and like how these racist ideas work in different time periods, right? From the beginning of the establishing of the American colonies, you know, into the modern era. So Ibram X. Kendi does a brilliant job of writing this sort of definitive history of racist ideas in America, and this is absolutely worth picking up. Hannah, if she was here, she would tell you I'm pretty sure she read the young adult version of Stamped from the Beginning, and it is also it's less intense. This one is another big historical tome. Let me see, it's going to be like 500 pages. Yeah, it's like just over 500 pages. So it's a big one. Okay. The Stamped from the Beginning young adult version it's smaller, a little bit more digestible, but Hannah has read it. I'm almost positive Hannah's read it, and she said it was amazing. And quite a bit, you know, less of a commitment than this bad boy. But this one is absolutely worth reading. I read it, and I highly recommend picking that one up. And finally, this is actually the only book on this list that wasn't written by a Black American. This one was written by David W. Blight, but this is Frederick Douglass, Prophet of Freedom. This is a biography by David. Make sure I get it right. David W. Blight. It's another big one, right? So these last three, these are all three like real kind of intense histories. This is a biography, obviously. But it's really well done. Blight incorporates a lot of Frederick Douglass's own writings into telling this story of Frederick Douglass's life, his experience being enslaved, his experience being free, which he, of course, wrote a lot about during his life. And Blight does a very good job of incorporating that into this biography. And while it is quite a commitment, I gave you pages on the other one, so I feel like I should give you the pages on this one. This one is maybe even a little bit more epilogue. There we go. Yeah, so this one is 764 books. So pages, excuse me. So almost 800 pages for this one, but it is worth it. It really is. I read the whole thing, and it takes a while. It's a commitment, but it really is a worthwhile endeavor to pick up Frederick Douglass, Prophet of Freedom by David W. Blight. You won't regret it. It'll take you a while to get through it. It took me a while to get through it. And I read through some of these like history ones really fast because like that's my thing. Like I'm a historian, and so that's kind of like my favorite sort of genre to get into. And so sometimes I go through these like, you know, really quickly. I will tell you, this one took me a little while. It took me a little while, but it was worth it. It was absolutely worth it. So okay, that's the end of my Juneteenth book list. If you want to like see a little synopsis of each of these books, you want them listed, you want to see like what, you know, the cover is a little bit better, you forget which one you were thinking about reading, definitely go to our blog. It's thebookwar.com. You can go straight there, or the link is in our bio on Instagram. Also, we'd love it if you liked us, you followed us on Instagram, we're The Book War 2. We're also on Facebook. We have a YouTube channel, The Book War, and this video will go up on there in the next couple of days. So if you want to re-watch this video to see what I had to say, or if you didn't get a chance this time to see parts of it, you can go to YouTube in the next couple of days, and it'll be posted there. You can check it out there. So anyway, have a really good, thank you for joining me, first off, and have a really good Sunday night, and have a really great Juneteenth tomorrow, and we will see you all later. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.